I'm Christy Knipe, and this is my JFK School case study. Um, so let's get started with this. The situation is that as a new administrator, Mrs. Rose sees that there's a need for the school to develop a way for parents and the community to engage more with the school for the good of students. But when she approaches the principal about it, he's not in favor of it, and the community has not responded well in the beginning. So she needs to overcome a real lack of interest on both sides and to get some more details before she can successfully implement a program that's going to work at her school. There's some things that we already know to get started with from the data that was given to us. First of all, she's new to the school and she's new to being an administrator, but she does have training. She does have the complete theoretical background, and she wants to apply those things that she knows already. We know that there is not currently a parent-teacher organization at JFK, but there has been something there in the past. We know that the principal has experienced a lot of parent apathy from things that he's been trying. He says that there are a few people who attend meetings, a few who volunteer or provide input. We know that he receives some calls, though, from parents, and that he is communicating with some of the parents, at least through parent-teacher conferences. We also know that he has decided that he is open to being advised from a parent group, although he's not ready to commit to having a parent-teacher organization. And we know that when approached, at least a few people will respond, because there was an announcement on a Friday for a meeting that was the next Monday, and 8 parents came just from that short notice. There are still some things that we need to know before we can successfully attempt such a program. First of all, the principal doesn't seem to attempt to foster communication because he says there's too much apathy. But is the reason of the apathy because the principal doesn't attempt to foster communication? So which comes first? We also need to know some of the pertinent details about the school. From the data that was given to us, we don't know the number of students or the number of teachers or their strengths and weaknesses. We should probably survey parents to find out about how they're already involved in the school and how they want to be involved in the future. We also need to know what resources exist in the district that we can use for communication, if there are some channels already available to us. And we need to know what resources exist in the community that we might be able to use, or connections that we have with people in the community. So here's the problem defined. Whatever collaboration exists at JFK, it's largely accidental. It's just whatever happens, at least as far as the administration is concerned. As a new administrator and assistant principal there, Mrs. Rose wants to apply the best practices that she learned in her master's program, and she wants to create this more structured, organized process for collaborative communication, and she's doing it for the good of the school. But her principal's negative attitude toward it and the apathetic feelings of the parents and the community members have to be overcome in order for her to succeed at this. So we need to come up with a plan and a strategy to make it work. First of all, it's important that we engage the parents who are already connected, and then that we recruit other educators to work with them to create an environment of collaboration and open communication. We want to be able to employ different technologies and things that are available to us. We want to use the local media, and we want to use face-to-face communication too, and some things that already exist, so that we can get all the stakeholders involved in the successful education of the students in this district. Here's the plan of action. First, we're going to start with what's right in front of you. There were 8 parents who came to the meeting that are interested in parental involvement, so use them. Next, we're going to need to research what can be used to help. What experts are there? What tools are at our fingertips? What funds do we have to work with? What opportunities already exist in our district? Then we're going to need to let people know why it matters, why we even need to do this in the first place. And that's going to mean establishing a mission and some goals that are specific things that we can achieve. And finally, we need to cultivate an environment where parents, community members, and educators all share in the leadership of this program. So, starting with what we have. There was one meeting with only 3 days notice, and 8 parents came, so they obviously care about the topic, and we should use them to get them involved and let them be the leaders for this group. Let them start the process. So we should take whatever we can get from them as far as feedback that can tell us about communication, what they think will work and won't work, what they like and don't like, and then find out from them how they would like to be involved in the collaboration and what their priorities are for their children's education. And something we can give back to them in exchange for that is something to do. We can make them responsible for something, because when people have a task to take care of, they're going to stay more connected with the concept. So give them something to do to get involved, formalize a committee, have them do some research, have them help with publicity to start getting the word out that it's important. In conducting that research, we have to know what already exists before we can start to apply it. So first of all, we need to know who's on staff, who are the experts in the community or within our school, or even among the student body. Are there some kids that have particular skill sets that would be helpful, like web design ability or broadcasting ability or writing ability that could be used? We need to know about technical skills. We also need to know about contacts. Who is who in our community? And we need to know what data exists and things that we can use that's already been measured that might be helpful for us to know. We need to understand more about the media in the community. What exists to us? Is there a newspaper? Is there a radio station? Is there a television station? Is there a website? What already exists that we might be able to use to help with the communication process? And then we need to find out how communication already takes place for our parents and our teachers. In what I determined as 3 categories: accidental communication, purposeful communication, and then professional communication. Um, Accidental communication is things that maybe aren't very planned but yet are already happening. So how do the school and community communicate with each other right now? Figure out where they're talking face to face, who's spreading things word of mouth, how to get the information to the right people so they can continue that process, and capitalize on the good things that already exist. In terms of purposeful communication, is there a communication director, or does the district have a communication plan? Are there opportunities for meetings that we don't know about that we're not using? Are there events that happen that would be good places for us to reach more people? Use and improve those things first before you create new events or try to recreate the wheel. And then considering professional communication. If there isn't a school communications professional, until you can get one, you should find people, professionals, experts that are in the community or within the immediate area who might be willing to volunteer their services, and find out what their expertise is, get their advice, and involve them in the process. We also have to know why it even matters, and we have to be able to pass that information on to all of the stakeholders. So the parents, teachers, community members, students need to know as well. So what's the reason for the collaboration? Why are we doing this? And once we've explained that to them, then we can hopefully get people to buy in. First of all, we should create talking points for the parental committee members to use to spread the word. When they have that information at their fingertips and they're repeating it to people on a regular basis, they learn it and they start to internalize it, and it becomes just part of the vernacular. We need to get the staff on board by recruiting committee members and giving them some assignments too, because we can't think that this is something that's going to work just from the administration to the parents and skip over the people who are really in contact with the kids the most. And finally, we need to launch a community campaign that uses both internal and external communication channels. So again, going back to those media that exist, if there are newsletters, if there's a parent portal, if there's a website or a blog or a calling system or whatever we already have, find different ways to apply that to creating messages that can be distributed back and forth between the school and members of the community. We need to think about this in terms of that big picture to getting it to ground level where people are actually applying it. So when you have the stakeholders on board, you've recruited people, you've shown them that it's important, you've shown them the reason for it, then we have to have them help set up specific and measurable goals for the communication and for involvement. So people will bond better if they have a say in the process. So it's important that they're part of that goal setting. Sharing in the leadership will also be important. We have to cultivate an environment where parents and community members and educators all share the leadership so that it's not one-sided or that the power is not disproportionate. The most important thing to keep in mind is what's best for the students. There are some standards that have been established that show us what has worked successfully for other places, and everybody always thinks their community is unique and that, oh, things are different here. It might work someplace else, but it won't work here because we're special. Actually, we have to use what has worked other places and trust that that is quality information that's going to work for us as well as it has in other districts. So first of all, we know already from what works in other schools that internal and external stakeholders share a vision of learning with common goals, and that will help to create a good environment. We know that it works best if students learn in an environment where students and teachers and parents, administration, community, all of them agree together and collaborate to develop that learning program. We know that it's a best practice for those in leadership to consider the best ways to utilize resources for the best results of learning. We know that it works well when the interests and needs of the community are considered when we're thinking about how to use resources in partnership with everyone collaborating together. We know that it's a best practice for leaders to model appropriate practices and behaviors for student success, that we can't just tell them, but we also have to show them the right way to behave. And we know it's very important for leaders to rise to the occasion and care enough to do the research and go to the extra work to understand the community and what they need, and to use that knowledge for the benefit of the students. So it all comes down to bringing together parents, teachers, administrators, and community members who all care about the students and who all have those, all of those adults behaving ethically, behaving in a professional manner, and doing their best for the students. That's really what's important. And how do we know this will work here? Again, everybody likes to think that their community is special and unique, and And a lot of times people say, oh, that might work down the road, but it won't work for us. So how do we know that it's something that can actually be applied to JFK? Well, first of all, we know that communication is important. There used to be a community involvement group. There were former parent-teacher groups that we heard about, and it's a possibility that some of the people who belong to them are still in the community. We know that some parents do call and communicate when they have a problem or an issue, that talk to the administration even without being solicited. So we know that there's an interest. We know that we gave very little warning and not a very well-written message and sent it home with kids to parents who weren't even expecting to receive it, and we had a handful of parents who turned up. So we know that there are some people who care about this topic. And we're also seeing that the administration is starting to see the need. The principal changed his position. At first he wasn't open to it at all, and with just a little bit of mention and discussion about it, he decided that he was open to an advisory group. Things I had to keep in mind during the process of working through this were what was best for the students. The current climate is something that could not be a good educational system for them. It's probably really difficult for them to feel pride in their school when no one in the community is really receiving communication or understanding or supporting the school situation. They probably don't feel very nurtured or supported in the activities that they do, and it's going to have to be better for them to improve that environment. I also had to keep in mind that this situation sounds really challenging, especially when it seems like the only person who cares about it at the beginning is Mrs. Rose and maybe those 8 parents who showed up. But that's not something that can't be overcome. They're not in a crisis mode. Um, they can work together and do what some other schools have done and follow the processes that have worked other places and learn from that and help improve their school district. And then the third thing that I had to keep in mind was what facts already exist and what processes have been successful elsewhere that we could apply here. I also had to think about the most important things, my values, the actual things that had to be part of this. And the first one is that the community and the parents of students really do care. They may not be showing it actively, but they do care about what happens to the kids. And so do the teachers and administrators. They just need to show it in a different way than they do now. So not keeping things so much internalized and thinking of it as just their process, but thinking of it as education being something that works for the whole community. There are some unresolved issues at this point. First, we have to know that the steps of the process are going to have to be evaluated and observed upon and reflected upon, and things may have to be changed as needed depending on what response there is. So if we decide that we're going to conduct an event and it's not well attended, maybe we need to consider, is it the right kind of event? Is it at the right time, in the right place? If we send out a survey and we're doing it by direct mail and we don't get a good response, then should we say that maybe it's not that surveying is a problem, but we shouldn't do it via direct mail? We need to do it in a different manner. We also need to establish a baseline for measuring results now and then comparing them with growth in the future. So things like how many attend events, or how many impressions are we making with communication, how many people are we reaching through those devices, how many dollars are we earning, and how many dollars are we spending. Those are all things that could be measured and compared. In reflecting on this plan, first of all, we had to think about collaborating with families and community members, and we did that by asking parents to work side by side with Mrs. Rose to launch the program. We're involving teachers and school representatives to share their expertise. We're looking in the community for resources and people that can be engaged, and we're involving students and showing respect for their abilities and skill sets too. We have to think about how we respond to the diverse needs of our community and their diverse interests. And a couple of ways that I did that were to give responsibilities to people who have an interest and that have specific expertise, and then show that I value them and give them a leadership position. I also decided to reflect on the process and results and modify it as needed to set new goals and to keep everything on track, and that will depend on the community as well. And then the last way that I have most community resources, we'll look at the existing media and bring that into the communications process and then encourage them to participate in the campaign. And to think of other needs, as other things are determined, then we look to the community members first and find skills and resources that can meet those needs. So it's a long process to overcome something like this, but it's not something that can't be done, and I think that Mrs. Rose can achieve success if she continues with this